Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video, and welcome to what might be one of the most underrated but best F1 games we have ever had. Yes, of course, today we're going back in to our ranking the old F1 game series. If you missed out on the video last week that went live playing F1 24, I would highly recommend going back and checking it out. Today though, rather unsurprisingly, we're back on F1 23. Now, this one, I think a lot of people kind of remember quite fondly. If you played F1 23, you'll probably remember this game quite well. But it was, I think, a little bit underrated in this series. It didn't do as well, I think, as EA were hoping it would. Obviously, especially after the massive disappointment that was F1 22. But, yeah, we're basically going to go through today. We're going to jump in. We're going to explore this title and kind of talk about, where, kind of how good I think it was and where we're going to rank it, of course, on our overall leaderboard as well. Now, obviously, immediately on the main menu, we did have Breaking Point, which admittedly is something that I'll only ever play once inside the F1 games, but it is a nice little feature to have and something a little bit fun. Of course, we had the single-player career and two-player career. Obviously there was My Team, but this was on like the older version of two-player career mode. Of the older My Team version as well. They're on obviously the older driver career mode, so it was a little bit quieter. You can see apparently I was doing an Audi career mode, a Lancia career mode, and then a Williams driver career mode as well, which apparently I never even finished Abu Dhabi. I don't remember doing that, but there we are. So yeah, F1 23 though, of course, I think, like I said, for a lot of people that played this game, the handling model was a huge upgrade from F1 22, of course. The previous year's game had been absolutely terrible, so I'm hoping that obviously, if we go back to F1 23, we're going to be able to compare it to what we kind of saw IRL, and, how well the game is held up in more recent years as well. I forgot just how good the full blacked-out Mercedes looked inside this game. Obviously, McLaren still down in the middle of the pack. That feels really weird now to be talking about. Any other decent liveries as well? I mean, the V-Carb livery, that was pretty good. Williams actually had a very good livery as well back in 2023, and of course then the Audi Sport 1 as well. But yeah, I think we're going to jump in. We're going to do a few laps in the Mercedes. Of course, Bahrain, the season opener back then before Jeddah and Australia. Baku. I completely forgot, of course, Baku was like the first European race before we went out to Miami. Then, of course, back to Imola and Monaco. Have we got any other tracks? I believe this game obviously had, obviously, Qatar back on the calendar as well. Las Vegas, of course, the first Las Vegas Grand Prix. And then we had Shanghai, France, and Portugal inside this game as well. Now, obviously, we did some laps around Portugal last weekend, so I think we'll do a few laps of Las Vegas, and then we'll head in and do a race from La Castellet. Being absolutely flashbanged there as we try and make our way out into the circuit. I was expecting this place to be in the dark, but apparently not in time trial mode of F1 23. But immediately, of course, as always, the first thing you notice is the old HUD. I quite liked this one. I think F1 23's, again, was a bit like F1 24's, pretty good. I mentioned it on last week's game. It's something that everybody complains about every single year. Just obviously the HUD, they never like it in comparison to the year before. But I would say 23s and 24s are definitely better than F1 25s. And I think better than F1 22s as well. If I remember that year's game, it was a very weird HUD as well. But immediately, just going through these first couple of corners, I forgot as to just how not agile the front end was on these cars. Now, obviously, I'm running this on a default setup, so it won't be perfect, but I much prefer the way these cars handle inside the game. You can see, able to break traction on the exit of the corner, but even then, when I kept my foot to the floor, it kind of gathered itself back up, which I think is really good as well. But, you have got to brake a little bit earlier into the corners. Oh, I forgot how small that curb was as well, heading out into the back straight. Used to absolutely take the mick with that inside this year's game. But yeah, the car feels a lot heavier. It feels a lot planted, which I think is probably slightly more accurate to what we've had with these ground effect cars. Of course, obviously, a lot of the time on the modern F1 games as well. Let's just try flick steering into here. I mean, you just understeer. The front tyres definitely have way less grip which I think made racing a lot more predictable and probably a lot more fun as well. Now, obviously, when we get into the race, we'll kind of have a look, because DRS trains as well weren't really as much of a thing inside F123. But yeah, just the way the cars handle, a lot more difficult to actually lock up the brakes though. Which I guess we kind of still see a bit of front locking and things like that in Formula 1 now, so that's not a huge... Well, maybe it's a little bit too easy on the brakes on this year's game. I mean, it was near impossible to lock the rear up, which of course now is a really prominent thing inside the last couple of games. But yeah, I mean, once you kind of get used to it, you can really get on the throttle quite early as well. I remember this title, there was a lot of traction on corner exit, of course, again, coming off the back of F122, where there was no traction whatsoever at any point. F123, the handling model, I think it was definitely a lot easier, but it felt kind of a lot more realistic. More difficult doesn't always mean more accurate inside the F1 games as well, so I much preferred this, as well as, again, whoa, yeah, curbs you've still got to be careful with, especially if you try and get right on the loud pedal very early over a curb like that. It's gonna punish you. But I mean, yeah, like I said, I've obviously never driven a real life Formula 1 car. I've never driven a ground effect Formula 1 car or anything like that, but this is a lot more as to how I would expect these cars actually drive IRL. Now, I know obviously on 24 the flick steering was quite hated by a lot of people. It seems to be still there in F125, but nowhere near as bad. But yeah, F123's handling model was just so much better. You did have to be more careful with it. The cars were understandably a bit slower anyway. But ultimately, yeah, I just don't believe this game kind of got the hype that it needed to, and it was almost a perfect storm, I think, for EA. Number one, obviously, F122 have been terrible, so a lot of more casual players that, maybe played F1 2021, because obviously that game was hugely popular, then didn't play F122 as much because it was terrible and just never played F123, which was a big shame, because, yeah, this year's game was really good fun. Number two, of course, people forget very quickly just how boring the 2023 season was. Of course, Max Verstappen absolutely dominated. 21 Grand Prix victory from 24 events. Red Bull were so far out in front on most weekends, or at least Max was, that really kind of any good battling was going on behind, and generally people aren't so interested in that as well. And of course, especially where it was one driver so much better than the other, at least in kind of like 2025, Oscar and Lando have been pretty close, and even Max Verstappen has been able to try and chalk up a couple of victories. Obviously, George Russell has had a victory as well. Still waiting on Ferrari. But yeah, there was just so little interest in Formula 1, especially by the time this game had come out, because obviously Verstappen had absolutely wiped the floor with everybody through the early stage of the season, and would continue to do so right the way throughout as well. And of course, yeah, the other big thing, F1 World, they were still really trying to see how much they could cram into F1 World and work out how little everybody cared. And then last but not least, of course, yeah, the fact that we'd had no major updates, to career mode or anything like that. I mean, understandably, I think they had to basically spend most of their time trying to fix the handling model from F122 into F123. But yeah, the fact we had no career mode changes, no driver career mode changes, no My Team career mode changes. By this year's game, the old My Team system was effectively then in its 4th year. I think most people had, kind of figured out, the best route of action to, if you'd set up a team that was a backmarker to get them all the way to the front within about 3 seasons. And then obviously after that, it was a little bit dull, a little bit repetitive. And of course, I think they were working behind the scenes already on the career mode changes for F124. But yeah, it just didn't quite work in the way they'd hoped for. So I think, F123 was a fantastic groundwork. Like I said, the handling model was the big one. It desperately needed improving. When we go back to F122 next week, that one was atrocious. But it kind of feel like EA did that right on F123, but it just so solely focused on that, that everything else had kind of been abandoned still, which was, yeah, a huge shame. But, I mean, yeah, just from doing these few laps here at Vegas, immediately I feel like I've been able to get the car into a good rhythm. I mean, look at that. It will break free a little bit, but you can gather it up still with your foot flat to the floor, and that's really, really enjoyable. It was kind of high risk, high reward, but did certainly deliver a great feeling as well through the title. I would highly recommend, if you can, grabbing F1 23, because I would definitely say the handling on this game much better than 24 or 25 still.
What a qualifying yesterday for George Russell. He'll start today's race from pole position, and Oscar Piastri completes the front row. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Perez, Norris, Fernando Alonso, Hamilton, Stroll, Sainz, Leclerc, Verstappen, Magnussen, Ocon, Albon, Hulkenberg, Sargent, Gasly, Joe, Ricciardo, Tsunoda, and Valtteri Bottas begins the race from the back of the grid. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today.
Well, here we are then out at Le Castellet, and of course, you know, one of the big storylines, wasn't it, from F1 2023 was, you know, the resurgence of Fernando Alonso. All those podiums throughout the early stage of the campaign. Of course, then Aston Martin completely fell apart and have continued to do so. You know, go up and down in terms of their performance as well. But I figured, you know, we'd do this race as Fernando Alonso. And I mean, even just 2 years ago, I'd forgot just how many kind of different drivers were on the grid. Of course, who can forget Logan Sargent down at Williams? But here we are then. Let's see what we can do. For some reason, Verstappen is nowhere near the front of the grid. It's 5 red lights. As the lights out, and away we go there. It's a tremendous start against Perez and Lando Norris there in towards turn 1. So immediately Fernando Alonso up into P3 then, as well, braking a little bit early. I've got to try and remember where I'm going here at Le Castellet. Of course, so many layouts around this venue. It can be tricky to try and remember which one you've got to be going on there, as Piastri and Perez now wheel to wheel down in towards turn 3 and turn 4. I must admit, the AI immediately giving us a pretty good start here as well. Hamilton diving in behind there to try and get down the inside of Lando Norris as well. So, I mean, with Verstappen out of the picture, this is just how good F1 in 2023 could have been. I mean, the battle between Hamilton, Perez and Alonso for the championship would have been absolutely sensational throughout the course of that season. Just look at that. I mean, this Aston Martin, not the fastest car in a straight line, and Hamilton has completely had me there up towards the top of the circuit, just straight around the outside, later on the brakes. And great to see that obviously the AI can do that as well. They're trying to use a bit of battery, see if we get a run, or to the inside there, as you really do feel the front of the car, kind of the weight of the front tyres as well there, you know, the downforce, everything like that, does make it sensational to drive these cars. Like I said, I mean, even in the dirty air and everything like that, this is how I would expect these ground effect cars to drive. You know, you have got to be a bit more smooth with them, obviously, because they are quite heavy, but none of this ridiculous flick steering and everything like that we get in modern times there as well. Just struggling a little bit. You know, again, I'm so used to the cars feeling a bit lighter now. Struggling a little bit with understeer through a couple of the corners, but Paul Ricard as well. I must admit, I know it was never the most popular circuit IRL in Formula 1, but so fun to drive on the games. As again, just getting a little bit squirrely there out of the first couple of corners, but again, able to catch that slide, able to kind of get the car positioned where we need it as well there, and obviously just able to keep it planted. But yeah, F1 23 though, I mean, I would love to come back and do some career modes on this game. You know, as I've said before, over on Mat 2 and 2 gameplay, I still want to do a series where I go back through and obviously play some of the older F1 games as well, try and win a world championship on all of them. But obviously F1 23 might take me a little while before I would ever get to that point there, as it's even the fact that short shifting wasn't as important on this title as well. Obviously you can get away with using like second and third gear rather than just immediately trying to be up in fourth to get the power off the corners. Now, short shifting has pretty much always been a thing on the F1 games ever since they went to this Ego engine all the way back on F1 2015, but it did really feel like on F1 23 it was less prominent than what we'd seen elsewhere, as I love how aggressive the AI are willing to try and go for moves as well. It feels like, again, in the last couple of years, they have been rather kneecapped inside the F1 franchise as well, which is, yeah, always a bit of a shame. Because, yeah, on 23, and even on 22, to be fair, they would kind of give you good battles, good run for your money. But, of course, again, just for some reason in the last couple of games, that seems to have been taken out again. And, well, like I said in the intro, I really do feel like this game was almost... You know, I think F1 25 is still good, but it's not quite on this level. You know, had they done some of the updates to career mode, had we got, like... you know, the more up-to-date career modes inside the game. I still think firmly for F1 26 that you need to be able to drive as yourself in My Team again. But, yeah, you put, like, the newer driver career mode, the new My Team career mode in this game, I would argue it would probably be on par with, like, F1 2020 or F1 2021. It was just obviously the fact those games, you know, that new career mode style, you know, on F1 2020 especially, was still fresh in everybody's mind, and of course it had a couple of other cool little features as well. There is already now, we've got Leclerc and Norris trying to make it 3 wide maybe, up into Scene Corner, as we will just about cover off. And you can already see there's a big gap opening up to those drivers in front. But yeah, I mean, maybe I'm not quite up to speed against the AI. I feel like this was, again, a game where the AI were pretty good, but not, like, stupidly good. You know, it's not like on F1 25, you know, where they're just hilariously quick in a straight line and things like that. You know, they do kind of make up time throughout a lot of the lap, and it kind of feels like that the AI on the last couple of games kind of almost still have this weight to their cars that obviously doesn't exist anymore, which is a little bit weird. Now, if I remember correctly, they didn't make many mistakes on F1 23 either. There is, speaking of mistakes, just looking at the front wheel slightly through turn 1, and again, immediately, Norris trying to pounce on that. Charles Leclerc now will try and get a run on him. But yeah, it just kind of feels like, again, with minus a few things that we've kind of had added in more recent games, I think, like I said, the big problem for F1 23 was it just had no hype behind it. You know, those contributing factors, like I mentioned, just how bad F1 22 was, how fairly dull the F1 23 season had been as well. Kind of is, yeah, like the perfect storm for this year's game. So, there we go. Getting around the outside of Charles Leclerc on the brakes. They're building up a bit of confidence as we get in towards these final couple of laps. But, like I said, behind Verstappen, this season was actually quite fascinating. Mercedes, Ferrari, Aston Martin, McLaren, even as well, all were fairly similar on pace. And, of course, Perez as well. You know, we kind of really saw that first real disaster for the second Red Bull seat that has kind of lived on throughout this ground effect era as well. There was all Leclerc almost into the back of us up through the end of the lap as well. But yeah, let me know your thoughts and feelings of F1 23 down in the comments below, because obviously I'm well aware that, you know, on PC now it is very, very difficult to find a copy of this game, but on Xbox and PlayStation, I'm sure, you know, there's still a lot of them kicking around, you know, physical discs, everything like that. Here goes Leclerc. Oh, down the inside of turn 1 there. Will we be able to try and get the DRS running him? I've had no DRS in this race. Oh, no! I've taken Lando with me. I heard the front wing there go. On the McLaren there. He couldn't really do a lot to try to avoid me in that scenario. Was Ricciardo. As I tried to rejoin the circuit, I refused to lose to Logan Sargent in this race there. So immediately we'll get back down the inside of a few cars. And well, I think there's been a huge bunch up of the train inside this race, but that was more my doing than this year's game. The field did spread out quite well, if I remember correctly, back on F1 23 as well. I was trying to see what speed we can get. This Aston Martin is never the quickest car in a straight line, but 212 miles an hour doesn't seem too bad there either, as I forgot just how good those Alfa Romeo Sauber cars looked. None of this hideous kick Sauber green that we've come to expect in the last couple of years. And that Alpha Tauri livery as well, absolutely phenomenal. It's obviously a bit sad that Nick de Vries no longer in the game as well, but of course, you know, didn't stay for very long in Formula 1 as well. There is trying to barge our way through the final few quarters. I believe, though, it's going to be Oscar Piastri that is going to claim the victory, as neither Norris or Gasly has a front wing, so not too sure what is going on for those two. Oscar Piastri is going to claim the win, I believe, ahead of Perez there, and both of the Mercedes. Can I get a run on Norris at the final corner? Everybody's got front wing damage, but is it going to be a drag race back to the line? Let's just wait and see. No, I think he's just about going to have me. But look at that, even there, like even with the AI on throttle, how difficult is that to implement in the current games? Because it feels like on F125, the AI just always on corner exit will get a run on you, which is frustrating, I think. Yeah, like I said though, let's head over to our ranking board and let's put F123 on there. Well, taking a look then back at our ranking board here, of course, F125 and F124 up in B tier at the moment. F123, I think it's definitely at least a safe A. Is it worthy, though, of being S tier? I think we might, you know, obviously when we get to the end of the series, I will come back and take a look at this. I'm going to put it in A at the moment, but I'm going to put it right at the top of A. So obviously, you know, if another game makes it into A tier, it will most likely slot in below F123. I think I just want to wait, you know, as we said before, F1 2013, 2020, 2021, I think those are going to be the ones that definitely make the cut into S tier. Like I said, F1 23, a great game. They really did fix the handling model, which sadly since then they've ruined again. But just the lackluster career mode, obviously my team now was feeling quite outdated, and obviously driver career mode hadn't seen its big updates yet. Left, I think, the fans wanting a little bit more. It was a great game to play. You know, I think for league racing as well, it was fantastic. Hence why even I did some league racing on F1 23. But, you know, you kind of compare it, the longevity of the game, kind of the replayability, especially in offline mode, I just don't think was quite there, as apparently this website has a huge amount of pop-up ads, which is rather annoying. But yeah, like I said though, let me know your thoughts and feelings on F1 23 down in the comments below. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. I think my PC just crashed. That's not reassuring. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed nonetheless. If you have, make sure you leave a like, get yourself subscribed, and, well, F123 broke my PC maybe.